Hey guys, Lucas here again. I'm here giving you another episode review of True Detective, bracing stuffy nose and ear infection, and we're going to be talking about episode 7, After You've Gone, which is the penultimate episode of the show until its season finale next week. So after the events of last episode where we discover why Marty and Rust had their falling out, and then at the end of that episode, they showed them meeting up in person after 10 years to catch up on things. And Russ brings it to his attention that we have a debt. We didn't do everything we could, and there's something wrong with this case. We did not solve it. Marty, who has now left the force and is a private investigator, doesn't want anything to do with it, so it takes some convincing, to say the least. Russ brings Marty to his storage room, which the detectives in the interrogation room wanted to see, but he wouldn't allow it. And we discover why is because he's been working on the case for the last 2 years, and that's why he came back to Louisiana to right this wrong. And he has these huge diagrams, and he has this whole convoluted theory that Marty doesn't agree with at first, but then Russ shows him this videotape. This videotape he acquired after breaking into Tuttle's house in Baton Rouge and finding this safe with these pictures of these kids with blindfolds on and these people with animal masks that of course lead to the Yellow King. And this videotape, we don't see all of it, we just see the first couple of seconds of it, and then we just get Marty's reaction to it, but it's obviously some kind of horrific child sacrifice, and that from that point on, Marty is on Russ's side to discover who is the real killer. And the real killer, and who they believe to be the Yellow King, is the man with the scars who was mentioned, I believe, in the very first episode of the show, and was a big part of last episode with Russ investigating like the child he saved in episode 5 from Reggie Ledoux, asking him about the man with the scars, and then she freaked out. So they are looking for this man with the scars. That is their primary goal to solving this case. So basically this episode's about getting the band together. There's some great stuff with Rust and Marty just chit-chatting about what they've been up to, and you know, something like that, small talk, would be usually not that interesting in a show like this, or just even in general, but because these characters haven't seen each other in so long, and because they're not used to being, you know, open and just having these typical friendly chats, that was one of the most interesting parts of the episode to me. And also we got to learn that Marty has stopped drinking, at least partially. He hadn't taken a drink 3 weeks until meeting Russ, and he was looking at people that Match.com. Never thought I would see Match.com in an episode of True Detective, and Russ was not lying about, you know, being an alcoholic and working at the bar. He is doing that, but that is why, this case is why he was brought back to Louisiana. During their investigation, they tracked down this old woman who was, I believe, the maid for the Tuttle family, and he asked about the man with the scars, if any of the members of the family had scars. She said that one of Tuttle's grandchildren did. And then he brings her the images of and drawings of the little twig things that have been prominent throughout the show, and then she just goes into this real creepy Carcosa rant, which I'm still not exactly sure what Carcosa is. I didn't do a lot of research with the whole Yellow King Carcosa stuff. I just know that Carcosa, I guess, is where the Yellow King is supposed to live, so I don't know how that's going to go into the show, but I'm sure it's some major thing in this cult or this satanic ritual. And so she gives this whole Carcosa babble that obviously shows that she was involved with the Tuttle's rituals, so to say. One of their biggest leads comes in the form of this sheriff who Marty used to be friends with, and he asked questions about the disappearance of this child named Marie Fontenot, I believe, who was the girl that was in the videotape that was reported missing, but obviously we know what happened to her, and Marty suspects that he's lying, so he brings Rust out. Him and the sheriff go on this fishing trip, and Rust tags along unbeknownst to the sheriff, and Rust is holding him hostage until he gets the answers that he needs leading up to finding the Yellow King. But the big reveal in this episode is at the end when the two present-day detectives are looking for the church that McConaughey mentioned in the first couple of episodes, and I think you see it in the first episode with the black minister, which is now torn down, and they ask this guy, where is it? This guy on the lawnmower, and he says, oh, it burned down a few years ago, it hasn't been there since, and they ask him directions to get back to the highway. And before he can finish saying how he knows his way around so well, the detectives drive off. But then he says to himself, my family's been here a long time. And then he gets up and you realize that he has all these scars right here. And the creator of the show, Nick Pizzolatto, has announced that this is our killer. And if you've been paying attention to the show, this is a guy that has been seen before. He was the guy that was mowing the lawn in the school in episode 3 that Matthew McConaughey ran into, but he had a beard back then. So this is the guy with the scars. He has been found, and it didn't even occur to me to even think of that guy as being the killer. But that being said, I don't think this guy is the Yellow King, because the Yellow King is this big cult leader, and if you have seen in the past episodes, people describe him as there are big people out there, and I don't think, unless they're talking about width-wise, this guy is not the Yellow King. He probably just did the murder of Dora Lang, but I feel like, especially if you've seen the preview for the next week's season finale, there's definitely some voiceovers that suggest that this is definitely not the Yellow King, and if you've seen the preview for next week, it sounds like it's a guy with like a British sort of accent, so I'm not exactly sure where this guy ties in to the whole murder, but he's definitely involved, obviously. Overall, again, I think this is an episode that sets up more for the finale. It's still a very good episode. There's a few things that let me down, so to say, in this episode. The only thing that really let me down was, ever since Marty has quit the Force and you see him now, he has become less interesting to me. He's still a great character. I'm still invested with him, but without all his flaws, and him just becoming like a regular guy now, it wasn't like watching the same character at points. It was very weird, and maybe that's just something that I need to get used to. But it just took me a while to feel like, oh yeah, this is Marty, because he's not fucking up. So maybe that's just a thing with me. I don't know if that's necessarily a problem with the show. And the other thing was, this episode definitely went by the fastest. When the ending was revealed, I was like, oh, we're already done. So in a sense, it left me wanting a little bit more, but again, I think it's mainly set up for the intense-looking finale. So let me know what you thought of this episode after you've gone. Let me know what your predictions are for the season finale next week. Do you think that any of our two main characters will die, which is, I think, something that is very possible? Let me know where you think this is going to go, and who do you think the Yellow King possibly is. So thanks for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week for the season finale.